Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Blue Marble Riders. And here we are testing another bike. This one is a 2016 DR650. Now this bike may not be long for the planet. It's one of the last carbed bikes being sold. They've just stopped selling it in Australia. And I have a lot of people asking me questions about these bikes. So a little bit about the DR650 first of all. This has been around in one iteration or another since the early 90s, and it took a major upgrade around the late 90s, early 2000s, and essentially has been the same ever since. It's air-cooled, it's a 650cc, about 370 pounds with a stock tank. This has got an Acerbis long-range tank on it, so it'll weigh a little bit more, but it will enable you to do about 350, 400 kilometers easily on this bike, perhaps more than that, if my memory serves me correct, because I used to own one of these bikes. It's got about 45 horsepower, about 47 foot-pounds of torque. It's a big 650 thumper. I guess we should call it a mid-ranged bike, as in mid-range capacity being 650, but it's a big single cylinder, so it's perhaps not the biggest single cylinder thumper that you can get, but it's pretty close. 650 cc's. This one's bog standard. Seat height's about 35 inches, so for you people who are perhaps of shorter inside leg, this is a perfect dual sport, perhaps even an ADV bike for you, because it is lower than a lot of the other bikes out there. It's got very plush suspension. It's very good on the road, apart from windage, of course, and we'll talk more about that later on, but you can't blame it for that. It is what it is. Off-road, I've got a lot of experience with these bikes, and I can tell you now, if you're moderate and slow and you don't overload it, you won't have too much problems. When you get to technical trails though, the weight can act against you. 370 pounds, and that's stock with no luggage or anything else like that on it. You drop one of these and you'll feel it picking it up. Not like a big BMW GSA 1250, but more than say a WR250R or my Husaberg 390, which is about 240 pounds. You'll definitely feel it a little more. What I did to my bike was I upgraded the front suspension and always meant to upgrade the back, and I think it is something you need to do if you seriously want to do some serious stuff off-road with it. Other than that, the bike is a tank. It is very reliable and bulletproof. What can we see that's on it? Well, this is all bog standard. It is carbed, as I said. It's got Bridgestone trail wings on it. They're the stock tire. It's got a disc on the back, as you can see. It's air-cooled with a little oil cooler right here, which is something I really appreciated. The engines, part of the reasons the engines are bulletproof is they have that oil cooler. It has no fan on it, but it keeps the engine in check, keeps it nice and cool. Single disc on the front, it is all you need. Long travel suspension, as you can see. A high fender, so none of those rocks are going to get caught underneath there. A simple rectangular headlight, not LED. Nothing's high-tech on this. There are no electronic bells and whistles. It is essentially a bare bones bike, and it reflects that in the price. The price is very reasonable for these bikes. It's one of the cheapest mid-ranged bikes in Suzuki's lineup, and Suzuki are I won't call them a budget brand, but they are definitely on the cheaper end, and this nails that. Like I said, you're not going to see too many more of these bikes around. In the next few years, if you watched my last video, these will definitely be on the chopping block. I'm not sure. I'll talk to the dealer when I get back, but how long these will be on the showroom floors is really up for debate now, and it's definitely the end is coming for these bikes. So if you want one new, this could be your last year. I'm not sure if this is one of the ones that Suzuki is axing from the chopping block, but I wouldn't be surprised at all. And if I were a betting man, I would say that this is very high up on there. Okay, back to the bike. Everything on this is stock except for the tank. The bars, they have this nice little bar across here where you can mount things. As you can see, my camera's on there. There's really, for instrumentation, you have bare idiot lights down here, neutral, turn signal, high beam, and on here it is simply a speedo with odometer. Okay, no tachometer, you don't need it. Kill switch on the right handlebar, starter down here, of course the throttle's there, horn, high beam, choke is right here. Yes, a good old carb bike. You're going to have to put the choke on, pull it towards you to start, run it for about a minute or two on that, pull it off, it ticks over just nicely, and it signals an indicator. That is it, okay? That is all you're going to get. Mild steel frame, 366 pounds, 45 horsepower, 47 foot-pounds of torques, and about 35 inches, 34.7 inch seat height. Pretty good for an off-road bike like this. First thing you'll notice when you get on is that back suspension is nice and plush. You can literally make her squeeze up and down. You're going to get a soft ride on this. Start her up, just turn her on, pull the clutch in. Okay, I don't even know, I can't remember if it has a sensor for the side stand and if I need the clutch in. So let's just, I'm in first, so before I go and try this, I'm in neutral now. Let's see if she starts. No. Let's see if she starts with the clutch in. Yes, she does. This would make a, I would say a good intermediate or new rider, not a raw beginner, but new rider bike. There's a gentle throb of a big cylinder going up and down. It's not aggressive, it's not shake your fillings or anything like that, but it's a gentle pulse. It's very nice. I remember this bike well. And as I take off, it's a very sedate bike and very linear. You're not going to get a power band. It doesn't get more interesting as you wind the throttle on. What you see is what you get from an early perspective. It's a hot day today. I'm going to keep my visor open. I hope it doesn't interfere with the mic too much. But what you get from low down on the rev range, you get all the way through. It's very torquey, so I think I'm in third right now, and if I open it up, it doesn't complain, buck or grumble like some of those older Ducati Multistradas used to. This one just, it goes, it takes off. I'm not going to blame the bike for this, but the throttle cables go, and I remember this with mine, they go right over the little idiot lights that you've got there to tell the idiot like me that's riding it that your indicator's on, but you can actually see them, so that's not a big deal. So I'm poodling along in third gear here, down in second gear here, and it doesn't matter what I'm doing, I'm getting the same for each. Okay, the brakes are very simple. They do the job. Are they phenomenal? Are you going to flip the bike? No. The suspension kind of covers up how effective they are, because there is a bit of fork type with this. So when you put them on, that initial bite, and there is a little initial bite, not a huge amount, that initial bite is tempered by the dipping of the front suspension. So there's no one behind me. Let's just get on that now. Shut the throttle down, front brake only, and it's sort of more a sedate sort of easing and slowing down than anything special. It's not as bad as I found the Royal Enfield Himalayan, but it's not as good as perhaps what you might consider modern brakes. These are, I would say, no different from the late 90s, and so you do get that sponginess. Ways to improve them? Oh, you could put steel braided brake lines on. I've always felt this would make a great super motard. It's just a wonderful bike. It handles well, the frame is beautiful. Now the suspension will get you out of shape, but the frame won't. So, you know, reasonable speeds, you go around a corner, and I remember it tracking really well. I had an old Cafe Racer twin cylinder air cooled at that time, and this would outperform that in the corners and was a lot more fun. Very quick to change direction if you wanted to, but not so quick that it's unstable. I am now in first gear. I'm pulled over. There's no one behind me. I'll give her a bit of a thrash for you. So here we go. Whoop. And as you can see, she sounds the same in every gear. And now I've run out of gears because this is a 5-speed, not a 6-speed. Now, while I seem to be playing down on all the specs, this bike is better than the sum of its parts. Okay, you're very unimpressed, I'm sure, with all the specs that are thrown about these days. It only has one real competitor, perhaps two. There's another one in the Suzuki line, the DR650, but I would argue that that's a slightly different bike. It's more dirt capable than this bike and a little better performing. However, I think this is a better all-round bike, and I'll get on the highway later on and tell you why I think that is. 5th gear, but it's more like an overdrive. You can push, this'll do 120, no problem. The engine's quite comfortable at that speed, whereas with the DR650, you're starting to get a bit buzzy. It's getting a bit annoying at that speed. So the only other real competition for this bike is the KLR650 by Kawasaki, and they've recently upgraded that. It's an incredible value for money, but, and I haven't ridden the new one, but there's very little different under the plastics with it. There's been a doohickey mod and a few other sort of minor mods to it, but essentially that is the same bike that it always has been once it got water cooled, and that's the big difference between the two. The KLR650 is water cooled. This is air and oil cooled, and that's it. There's quite a big change between 4th and 5th, which is nice. Like I said, 5th is like an overdrive on these things, so you can spend a lot of your life in 4th. In 4th I'm doing about 85 right now kilometers an hour. That's about 55 miles an hour, something like that, 54, 53. And there's gentle pulse through the bike, but nothing intrusive. It's not going to make your hands go numb or anything like that, but you can feel you've got a big single between your thighs. I'll leave that hanging. So as we're carrying on, I was talking about the KLR. The new one is a little more refined. The engine's a little more refined, but this, I believe, the power hasn't changed much on the new one. So if that's like the first generation liquid cooled, which I have ridden, this is more responsive than even that. The KLRs, because of their big frontal area, they do struggle to maintain upper highway speeds. This has less of an issue. It's got a little more power. It's certainly a little lighter, quite a bit lighter actually, and it has less frontal area, which of course means less protection. So for me, I was always a DR650 proponent. I had the choice of a KLR and a DR650. I rode them both extensively and decided for my needs, which was daily commuting and then weekend off-road, this won out. The one disadvantage this had to the KLR is the KLR had a much bigger tank on it, stock, but that's easily remedied. There are so many aftermarket parts for this bike, it's not funny. The DR650 and the KLR650 have an enormous aftermarket following. I'm not even going to go into the websites you can go to. You can change pretty well everything on this bike except for the chassis. Everything else could be changed on this bike. Wiring loom probably included. As I ride it stock right now, with its standard carb on it, it's fine. It does the job. It's got 45 horsepower and it feels, you know, quite nice. But if you want to turn this thing into a bit of a beast, then you can go get a pumper carb for it. You can change the jetting on the stock carb, and there is a big debate on the forums about which one is better to do, but I was always going to go with the pumper carb. Anyway, you can do that and you will notice an incredible difference. It's a bulletproof engine. There are or were some issues with third gear, if I remember my memory from when I was buying, but it wasn't a big one and I never suffered from it. My bike was ridiculously easy to maintain and ridiculously reliable. Going into the maintenance, these aren't shim and bucket valves, these are ordinary tappet screws. This is so easy to do. Everything I'm talking about right now is geared at the fact that this is probably one of the best do-it-all commuter bikes, off-road bikes you can get on the market. It's cheaper than the KLR650. It is better sprung than the KLR650. It is lighter than the KLR650. Stock, it does not come with as long tank or as good protection, but both of them still only have 5 gears. And raw base performance, you have to give it to the DR650. Then there's the off-road component. If you want to take this off-road, you need to maintain very moderate speeds. If you don't maintain moderate speeds, you're going to start to get bounced off rocks. You're going to feel the back shock bottoming out and pogoing you in the butt. You are going to quickly discover the limits of this bike off-road. Not as quickly as you will on the heavier KLR, but nevertheless, it's no great shakes off-road. You could take it easy and you'll be fine, but if you want that technical, you want to challenge yourself with technical trails, there are a few things you're going to need to do. The first thing you're going to need to do is to upgrade the front suspension. I put stiffer springs in. I also put some cartridge emulators in the top. It was by a company with gold in their name, if I remember rightly. That absolutely transformed the front end, especially with a big tank on it. You put a big tank on it, and that does tend to overwhelm this suspension more than the stock tank does. The rear suspension is an abomination off-road, and you will need to change it if you want to keep the bike and spend the time off-road with it. Handling, like I said, so stable, so predictable, very, very easy. And so I guess what we come to now is the ergonomics. And I'm 6 foot, 34 inch inseam, and on this journey, and from my memory serving me correctly, it is perfect for me. The reach to the bars, I'm out of this shield. This, by the way, is not stock. You've got this down here, the little plastic covering. This has been added. I'm not sure who makes it, but I'm still not getting any buffet from it. The air is coming, and it's coming to about here, so I'm getting air just on this part of my chest and up, and it's stopping right about here, so under my helmet. So I'm, like I say, 6 foot, and no problems there. The seating position, the seat is comfortable for shortish journeys or medium journeys, but if you're going to be doing you know, continent crossing epic trips, you might want to invest, you will probably want to invest in something that's a little more comfortable, but not too heavy, because you don't want to add to the weight of this. Not that it feels heavy at all, it feels light. I am just someone who is, I guess, a little bit OCD about weight when you're going off-road. That for me is the biggest factor on any off-road ride. This is, like I said, 366, 370. There are various things you can do to shed a little bit of weight here and there. The rear foot pegs. I took a passenger once on the back of mine, a couple of times actually. My wife, quite a long way actually, and it wasn't the most comfortable experience for her. Various other little things you can take off, but you're not going to skinny up the weight that much. So my reach to the bar is perfect for my 6 foot, 34 inch inseam. No problem at all. I feel really good. You're in an upright position. The wind blast is fine. My leg bend, I'm at about 80 degrees. It's pretty comfortable. That's the compromise you have to make. This is lower than a lot of other dual sports. This has got the stock tires on it. I think they're Trail Wings Bridgestone. They're very unobtrusive. I'm not feeling any vibes from the road at all. They would probably be something like 80-20 or 70-30 on-road tires. I used to put TKC 80s on mine, but road riding, you do tend to go through those like butter. But they are great off-road. There are probably better examples now. I think Shinko may have a good large block knobby tire that's DOT approved that would go on these. I haven't actually done the research, but I remember thinking about that. The gearbox is very predictable. It's got a nice snick to it. I guess the word I would use for this bike is slightly agricultural. You will feel it's slightly agricultural if you've been used to, like me, more modern, either 4-cylinder or V-Strom, other bikes. It will come across as slightly agricultural, but I challenge you to find any bike that goes off in the dirt that isn't slightly agricultural, if it's worth its salt. This being air-cooled, less maintenance, and that's probably one reason. It doesn't need a water jacket or radiator or pump or any of those things, impellers. Doesn't need all of that jazz. And so the maintenance on this is very easy, very straightforward, as I mentioned before. Now for the tactility. How does it feel as I'm riding this? What is it like? What's the feedback like? Does it put a smile on my face? Yes, it does. Partially because some of that smile is memories I've had on my DR650, of course, but riding it, it does put a smile on my face. But long journeys, this is going to be the perfect bike for going down to South America, for going to Morocco, for traversing through Europe. You're going to find parts anywhere for this bike. Not that you're probably going to need them, which is the biggest thing about it. It's reliable, it's predictable, it's stable. It's such an easy bike to ride. It's such a forgiving bike. You know what you're getting with it. What you see is what you get. So does this put a smile on my face? Yes, it does. It puts a smile on my face. This is old world riding. You feel everything, everything. You're in contact with the road, you're in contact with the engine. It's a very tactile bike. The handling on it is sweet. It's a very nice handling at reasonable speeds. The suspension does its job. The frame is great. You know, it's overbuilt. This tracks beautifully. It feels like the frame geometry feels like a modern bike. You're not going to have any nasty surprises with this. No head shake. Okay, so now for the highway portion of the test, and I think I know what I'm going to get because I have a good memory of this. I remember flying up to Campbell River with a friend of mine to to go explore a mine up there once, and we did it on the highway in October. It was cold and it was rainy, and I remember that ride well. You are exposed to the elements on this bike. And I changed into fifth at 90, and I'm all, you know, it was okay with it, but it could have waited till I was in at 100. I'm doing 100 now. I would guess this engine is turning over at about 3,000 RPM, maybe 3,300, something like that. And right now at 100, this isn't bad at all. With this shield here, which seems to make a little bit of a difference, I'm not having any trouble standing up. I can, yeah, I'm dead straight up, but I'm not getting blown back. It doesn't feel horrendous. I remember if I try to get it up to 120, which I'll do now, oh, it has no problem getting there at all. Now my head's in the wind. Let me just keep it on there, pinned on there. There we go. Oh yeah, it wants to go more than that. I'm not trying to go more than that. So 120, actually reasonably comfortable. Little more head buffet, of course, as you'd expect, as your head is doing 120 in raw air, but I'm not getting shoved back at all. I'm fairly limp. My abs aren't doing any work at all. So yeah, not a problem. How's the vibes? Not too bad. I can really feel it on the tank with my knees, but I wonder if the motor, I can't remember if the motor is rubber mounted, because I'm not feeling it through the frame. There's a little bit on the hands, and if truth be told, probably after 45 minutes or an hour I might have that slight tingling in my fingers from this, especially for some reason on the right hand side. It seems a little more. Fifth gear. It's got plenty of poke at this speed to get past traffic. Very predictable. Suspension is super comfortable. Buns are getting a little vibe through them at 120. Down at 100, it smooths right out. So at 60 miles an hour, 62 miles an hour, this thing smooths right out. Great engine braking as you'd expect on a single. In fact, I think I'm engine braking so well I might be holding this Freightliner up behind me, which might not be a good idea. What a DR650. Get punted into high heaven. And yeah, it's pretty nice to go along here. It's very stable at slow speed, even with the big tank on it. I'm just now putting my foot down, and that wasn't hard at all. Finding neutral, dead simple. Dead simple. It's a hot day today. Air cooling doesn't seem to be suffering at all. I remember riding it on 30 plus days up serious slopes at slow speed, tractoring up and down, and I never ever had an issue with it. Never had an issue feeling that it was getting too hot. I mean, it was hot. It was incandescent. I could feel the heat coming off it, but I never had an issue with the performance. You know, no pinking, no pre-ignition, nothing like that. Well, I don't think there's really that much more for me to say about this bike. They are very universal. When I say DR650, there are a lot of people on this planet that know what I'm talking about, and there's a good reason for that. They're not infamous. They're famous. They're famous for being sturdy, reliable, multi-role, everyday, economical, fairly comfortable, good, all-round bike. Are they the best at anything? They are absolutely not. They are the quintessential jack of all trades and definitely master of none. But I think if it came to this or a KLR, because I like off-road so much, it would be this, the air cooling and the slightly better stock suspension, the weight being the biggest. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed that, Blue Marble Riders. The review of the DR650. Leave your comments, questions, anything you have to say. I've had one of these, so if you have questions about them, I'm probably fairly knowledgeable to own it, and if not, I can pass it on to a few people I know. So yes, give me your comments, give me your thoughts. Let me know what you think about the DR650. If you own one, what have you done to it? If I missed anything out, what do you have to add? Cheers. Blue Marble Rider, out.
Once again, thanks for watching, everyone. If this is the first time you've watched, please consider subscribing. I do product reviews. motorcycle reviews, off-road and on-road vlogs, as well as tours. Don't forget to follow me on social media, that's Instagram, Facebook and Twitter, and to like, and especially, I'm begging you here folks, subscribe. This is the Blue Marble Rider, out.